have about a half an hour to get to our connecting flight to London. Pretty chaotic. We need to get to D5. This is about all of Amsterdam we're going to see this trip. But with the House of Tulips, you kind of get the Amsterdam experience, don't you? Or the Netherlands shop. Everything Netherlands, including a lion soccer mascot. Alright, there's our flight. This is it, last flight of the day. We're out on the wing again. And plenty of legroom. We made it! Welcome to London. I wonder what the difference is this time. Last time I came into this same airport, it was an hour and a half to go through customs. This time it was literally 3 minutes. And since I travel light, I never check a bag, so I never have to wait. Let's go find a train to the city. Even though it has been an insane amount of travel, I am gonna hit at least one stop today for the vlog of historical significance. So here we go, we just take the Piccadilly line from down here in the corner to Earl's Court right there, and then walk about 10 minutes to my hotel. And my hotel is literally like a block away from a very, very famous rock musician's former home. All right, rock and roll. Feels good to be back. There's the Earl's Court train stop we just popped out of. So what rock and roller am I staying right around the corner from? The former home of Freddie Mercury. So we will definitely be checking out his house while we're here. Wait, are we in America? What happened here? Alright gang, I'm all checked in, so now I want to go and do some vlogging. Where I want to go is about a 1.5 mile walk away, and we're going to go to the Edith Grove flat of one of the most famous bands of the world. This is actually the flat where they named their band, and the flat that they were living in when they got their very first gig. So let's go over and check out this famous, at the time it was a total absolute pigsty, but it's known for this one band living on Edith Grove. Though the members of this group didn't meet here, they met somewhere else. They all moved here together. Police call box. Oh, awesome. And in kind of a cool, ironic twist, this being such a shoddy neighborhood at the time, Many years later, a couple of these band members would own homes right around the corner from that same neighborhood, and it's actually the most expensive area in town now. And if you need some keys made or some shoes worked on, I love the look of the flats here. Aren't those great? So if you're wondering what the weather is like here in London in the early to mid part of July, this whole trip it's supposed to basically be like 75 degrees every day Fahrenheit, so really pretty much perfect. Now this is the Redcliffe School, and it almost looks like something out of Harry Potter, to be honest with you. The architecture and everything, pretty interesting. What an awesome car, huh? And what a great walking city. I love it. All right, we're in the neighborhood. We are close. Any guesses as to who this band is? Here's another odd little tidbit about their story. The one member of the band that everyone agrees was probably the main reason that it was successful, the whole reason it ever formed, was the same person that they kicked out and that most people never even knew was in the band. I'm really excited to see this because this is one of my favorite bands, and I'm actually going to go see them perform live next month. All right, so where we're going is 102 Edith Grove, and it's right there where all that construction scaffolding is. Right up there, in the apartment up there. There's actually like 5 apartments up there, but right up amongst all that scaffolding was where a man named Michael Jagger, Keith Richards, Charlie Watts, Bill Wyman, Brian Jones, and Ian Stewart became known as the Rolling Stones. So the origins of this band don't start here really, but the name does. And basically the origins of the band are that there was a man named Ian Stewart who was a piano player and was in some really great bands. And one night, well, basically we have to take it back a little further than that. Keith Richards and Mick Jagger knew each other from like the time they were kids. They weren't real close. They kind of had drifted apart over time, but Mick was known as Michael then, and he was studying economics. Keith was going to art school, and Keith was getting off of a train in Dartford and saw Mick walking around with a bunch of records under his arm, and he was kind of like dancing around and singing to him. And Keith said, I just looked at him, and I was like, oh my God, he's like, he's a rock and roll star. Like, he could just tell. So they started hanging out. They went to a show one night, and they saw Brian Jones sitting in with Ian Stewart's band. Ian Stewart was the piano player in a band, and Brian Jones sat in doing a slide guitar solo. And both Keith and Mick said to each other, like, they'd never seen anybody play slide guitar live, and they just knew that Brian Jones was special. But they also said that once they started playing music together, that Ian Stewart was really the driving force. He's the person who invited and talked them into getting Charlie Watts to play drums. He was really the most knowledgeable musician in the whole group. And they said without him, it would have never even started. It really would have never taken off anywhere. But they all loved blues, and that was the basis of the Rolling Stones. That was kind of what the formation of it was that they wanted to do a little bit harder version of the blues music, and so they were trying to get themselves in jazz clubs, and they really had no name and they had no reputation, no real way of getting into the clubs. So they moved to London here, and one day they called to get a gig at the Marquee, and while they were on the phone, the guy said, okay, well, tell me about your, what do you want, you know? And they're like, well, we want to play a gig, we have this band. And he goes, quit wasting my time is money, this phone call's costing money, what's the name of your group? And they had a Muddy Waters album out in front of them. Keith said Brian Jones looked down at the album, saw Rolling Stone Blues on there, and said the Rolling Stones, and they all agreed upon it, and that they became the Rolling Stones. They all lived together up here in this flat, and it was actually right up here, because Keith said he remembered always looking out the window from that upper floor, and they say it was just a pigsty. They had a they had a fireplace that you had to put coins in to get it to work, so if you didn't have any coins, you had no heat. They really had no money, so Keith used to go to the local stores and kind of shoplift food. Mick claims he never did it, but this is where they would start working on music together. Now originally, like I said, they were mainly doing covers, and so they weren't really writing songs as much as just practicing, and they said they always had acoustic guitars up there, and they would sit on that dirty brown carpet floor. And what's cool is that a couple of years ago they did something called exhibitionism, and it was Rolling Stones traveling museum basically, and they recreated this Edith Grove flat. And they said nobody ever did the dishes, so it was just constantly dirty, piled up dishes everywhere. It was filthy. Nobody ever cleaned. They in fact said they couldn't remember how they got their clothes cleaned. Mick said, I feel like I sent it home to my mom and she cleaned it and then had it sent back here like all tied up in a bow or whatever. Like nobody could really remember, but they said this was the starting point. They played their very first gig together at the Marquee in 1962 from that phone call that they made here, and they were pretty much getting a good start to being on their way. And then what happened was a manager who was working with the Beatles and had done Bob Dylan's UK promotions took an interest in the Rolling Stones and talked them into kicking out Ian Stewart. He basically saw them as the anti-Beatles and wanted to, being a man who had worked with Brian Epstein, he wanted to have his own group like Brian did that he could say was his, you know, and that was the Rolling Stones. And so he told them that image was everything and that Ian just didn't fit the look. He was heavier, he was older than everybody else, and so the Stones had to kick him out of the band. They did remain friends with him, but yeah, it's pretty sad that the guy, like I said, I've seen interviews with Keith Richards, Charlie Watts, and Mick Jagger all saying that without Ian Stewart there would have been no Rolling Stones. He was really the foundation that got everything launched. He was really what brought it all together and was really the only knowledgeable musician in that group until, you know, Brian Jones was more self-taught and he was more experimental, but Ian was really knowledgeable. But Keith said, you know, we kind of knew that it wouldn't work, because he said, I remember us playing a gig like 15 miles out of town and us like asking Ian, why are we playing out there? Nobody's gonna come see us out there. And he said, oh yeah, it'll be packed. We get out there and there's like 4 people. He goes, come to find out there was a golf course out there that Ian wanted to play at. And so, you know, but just things happen the way they're supposed to happen, and the Rolling Stones named themselves in here on that dirty carpet. So Andrew Loog Oldham became the band's manager in 1963. That's when they kicked Ian out, and he managed the band until 1967, basically getting them going. He had been recommended them by a magazine writer that said that they had potential, and took them, got them a deal with Decca, made all their first albums, produced their first albums, and then the band went off on their own. Now, in an interview I saw with Keith and Mick, they couldn't really remember exactly how many rooms that their flat here had, but what they said was, they said, we could definitely remember there was a living room that we all basically crashed in. There was 1 bedroom and somewhat of a kitchen and somewhat of a bathroom. I almost wonder if whoever was living in this flat for a long time moved out or passed away or something, and now they're because that you know, that's where the flat was. I'm wondering if they're renovating it and going to turn it into something Rolling Stones related, or who knows. A lot of times you'll see blue plaques on the outside of the flats here. They have a historical significance telling you who lived there or whatever. I'm kind of surprised there's nothing for the Stones there. So since we still have a little bit of daylight, I want to go find the Marquee. Now the Marquee is where they played that very first show as the Rolling Stones. It had several different locations, and I think I think where they first performed was not the more well-known location, but we want to see where they first performed, so we're gonna go find that one. And it's actually over, if you remember the last time I was here, it's over there where the hotel is that has, it's where they used to have, it used to be the courthouse where Oscar Wilde was tried, and they have the same bench and everything, the judge's bench in that hotel, so it's like in that same neighborhood. Bringing a touch of sunshine into your life. So it's either a 35-minute bus ride to get over there or an hour and 15-minute walk. I'm gonna go ahead and do the walk. A little bit of farmer's market type action here. The Goat Bar. Goat and Boots. There we go. Check that out. It looks like he means business. Awesome. I just found some nutrients on the go. Oh, that's a cool little shop over there. Check that out. I was walking along this wall and just happened to glance over and look at this old cemetery. Look at that. Check that out. Also, just walking by, glanced over and saw that. This stone was laid by Her Royal Highness, the Princess of Wales, on the 16th of July, 1880. It's right here at the Royal Cancer Hospital. Whoa, look at that. That crown on top? Wow, look at that Art Nouveau building. That's incredible. I think we have found the expensive area, shopping district. Not exactly the Mick Jagger fashion, but not too far from it in some areas. Now we get to cut through Hyde Park. Nothing like Hyde Park. If I lived in London, I would no doubt be here all the time. This is such a beautiful place to walk through. The rail parks are not a luxury, they're a necessity. Can you imagine London without them? 500 years of history and 5,000 acres of precious green space. The heart of London. If you remember the last time I was here, this is the same park that the Princess Diana fountain is in, on the other side of the park. See, remember those? Also, awesome fountain. And look at that one. Now we're roaming through the city of Westminster, which definitely has a bit of a different vibe. As far as the eye can see. Whoa, look at those. And as I'm out walking around, I noticed there's a Bill Wyman Sticky Fingers. Bill was the bass player of the Rolling Stones. How about that? A couple of Banksies right there. And they've covered it with plastic, you can see. It's got the glass covering it. I always think that's funny that they cover the graffiti so that nobody can graffiti the graffiti.
You to do the right thing, gentlemen, and get yourselves a vasectomy. Ladies, you should only ever consider sleeping with men who've had a vasectomy.
Oh, brother. He was just talking about veganism there. I don't know where he went with that one.
You're getting one? Okay, fine. Ladies, that's the man you want to consider. He's going to have a vasectomy. You can do what you like.
First blue plaque that we've spotted. George Canning. Now we're cutting through the Berkeley Square Gardens, because I want to see what this metal sculpture is up here. Huh. It's definitely very interesting. Okay, we've got a double plaque situation here. The top one says, this plaque was dedicated in the Silver Jubilee year of her reign, 1977, to Her Majesty the Queen, who was born here on April 21st, 1926. And then below it, it says, the City of Westminster, on this site at 17 Bruton Street, to the townhouse of the Earl of Strathmore in Kinghorn, where Elizabeth Alexandra Mary Windsor, later to become Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II, was born on the 21st of April 1926. You never know what you're gonna find. Wow, look at that polar bear. That is awesome. That is great, wow. And you can see right through it. Take a look at the architecture of that building. Isn't that something? Yep, we're definitely close because that is Liberty. That's the clothing store Oscar Wilde used to shop at. And this is now a hotel, but it used to be the Marlborough Street Magistrate. So that was the courthouse where Oscar Wilde was tried. That would have been 165 Oxford, where the Marquee Club was. So it is obviously long gone now, but right here's where the Marquee Club was. The first incarnation of it. It moved, I believe they said in 1964 or 1965, but the Stones made their debut as the Rolling Stones here in 1962. What's ironic is that even though this isn't the same building or anything anymore, just the same location, as I was walking by, I noticed that they're renovating the whole inside of this now, turning it into something else, so maybe I'll walk by and just kind of show you the space at least. Kind of cool to think of that. A bunch of upstarts starting there, and now we're 50 years in of them making music. The Rolling Stones. Different members, but still Keith, still Mick, still Charlie. Pretty cool. Yep, so right in there would have been where they first played. Well, my friends, I think I'm going to be a tourist for the rest of the day and kind of unwind after our long flight. But I wanted to send big shout out thank yous to Linda Danis, Lucy, Lynn, Susie Neal, and Mario Tavina for making contributions to my channel through Patreon. We'll see you all tomorrow when the rest of my friends roll into town. Have a great night and goodbye.